Hello and welcome to Good News Africa. So for now, I'm looking at the top headlines in Africa. Well, I look at the top headlines and then I attempt and make sense of those headlines. So from the Daily Monitor, Uganda, don't join politics. Nina Ross pleads with youth after election defeat. So this is after the election in Uganda in which Yoweri Museveni won by 71% of the vote. Bobi Wine got 24% of the vote. So why are youth advised not to join politics? So basically, it's a very tough terrain for youths who want to join politics, and I think the reason is that it requires a lot of money, and the politics, as they say, is a dirty game. So how can we have more youth in politics? I've often said if the youth in Africa transfer just 1% of the ingenuity they use in managing trillions of shareholder capital, if they transfer just 1% of that uh, ingenuity to politics, then Africa would be heaven indeed. So basically, this is about an Africa that I think we should be really thinking about. That is youth. Bring their talents. The young people are not leaders of tomorrow. They are the leaders of today, and that's why I will hope that we encourage more young people to seek elective seats. I think that is the way we would be able to really, and that is the way that we would be able to really ensure there's a development in Africa. Because really, if you think about it, leadership rises and falls on Africa's development rises and falls on leadership. So that's something that I think we should be really thinking hard about. And I think so that's from the Daily Monitor Uganda. Then another top headline from Radio Tamazuch, South Sudan, the folly of ethnic reductionism in reading the South Sudan conflict. The folly of ethnic reductionism in reading the South Sudan conflict. So this is about tribal politics in Africa. So in South Sudan, of course, there is a rift between the President Salva Kiir and the opposition leader Riek Machar. So Riek Machar is under house arrest. So South Sudan is Africa's newest country, having gained independence from the larger Sudan in 2011. So now its passport is recognized internationally. But then, of course, you have internal chaos within South Sudan, and I think that's something that I think we really need to think about. Why is it that there is always politics of tribe? I think in South Sudan you have that is the Nuers versus the Dinkas. Then in South Africa, the Xhosas versus the Zulus. In Zimbabwe, the Shona versus the Dabele. In Kenya, the Kikuus versus the Luos and the Kalenjins. In Nigeria, the Igbos versus the Yorubas, and there's North versus the South. So basically, I think we really need to interrogate why we should be having politics of ideology. That's the only way Africa is going to move forward. If we have politics of ideology, that's the only way that Africa can move forward. And I think if Africa moves forward, then I think that's the way we can have an Africa that is growing. We need a left of center party that's about equality of opportunity and a right of center party that's truly about individual dynamism, pulling yourself by your own bootstraps. So that's it from Radio Tamazuch, South Sudan, the folly of ethnic reductionism in leading the South Sudan conflict. So then another top story following that is Rwanda's Kagame, that is says Rwanda should be independent. Of course, after the DR Congo President Felix Tshisekedi went to meet President Donald Trump of America. So basically, of course, America is following up on the huge mineral resources in DR Congo. So basically, US wants to impose sanctions on Rwanda, and of course, and that means then that means that the US really is after the critical minerals, rare earth metals such as coltan that are instrumental in the semiconductor industry. So basically, I think and that's something that we should be following up on that is the conflict. I think DR Congo accuses Rwanda and Uganda of creating the instabilities in eastern DR Congo. So that's it from the Daily Monitor. Uganda. Then another top headline. This is from the Mail and Guardian. Cyrus winners and losers. So this is about the coalition government of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Of course, the ANC had its share of went into got only 40% of the vote in 2024, and so it had to share power with the Democratic Alliance (DA), which got about 20% of the vote. And so, of course, ANC, Africa's oldest liberation party, is slowly becoming a village party. It is there are only two parties in Africa, independence era parties, that are still at the helm of power. You have in Tanzania, you have CCM, Chama cha Mapinduzi, and in South Africa, you have and in South Africa you have the ANC. So the ANC brought about the end of apartheid and ushered in black self-rule. But has it been brought development to the people? No, it has not brought development to the people. And so you find that in South Africa, then you find that in South Africa, the opportunities for development then are not there. So that's it from the Daily Monitor. The Daily Monitor, from the Mail and Guardian in South Africa. Then I will move over to another top headline. NYDA takes youth access fight into mining's closed rooms. So this is about the youth fighting. This is from the Mail and Guardian. The youth want to own mines, so it should not be about their old families, old money families such as the Oppenheimer family. The youth want to own a share of the mines, and so of course you had the affirmative action black empowerment program in South Africa that saw blacks also get shares in large companies, but this happened to well-connected ANC cronies. It was not about basically it was not about wealth percolating down to the poorest South Africans, and this is why I think then that needs to change. We need to have more youth able to get wealth in South Africa. So that's it from the Mail and Guardian South Africa. Then another top headline I still, this is from The Guardian Nigeria. I still stand by it. Criminals have hijacked Nigeria, says Tubaba. That is, I still stand by it. Criminals have hijacked Nigeria, says musician Tibaba. So this is about lack of leadership in Nigeria and Africa in general. So of course, Tubaba says that the criminals have hijacked his country. And this is just a problem not for Nigeria alone, but for other African countries. Why is it that we are led by thieves, by corrupt politicians? I think politicians have really ransacked Africa, and I think politicians, if we are not careful, will sell us to the dogs. So basically, that needs to change. We need to have leaders that are of the utmost integrity. That is the way that then we could rebuild Africa and truly create a country where we are able to truly create a country that we are able a continent that is governed by leadership. Let's have just people with integrity in leadership. Why is it so hard to have people with integrity in leadership. So that's it. Then I will move over to another top headline, and that is CDIF, traditional leaders speak out on governance issues. That is from the Daily Mail Zambia Limited. From the Daily Mail in Zambia, this is we should be incorporating traditional leaders in our leadership structure. And I think if we incorporate traditional leaders, that is the way that then we can and that is the way that we can stabilize. We can make use of chiefs and kings. They have not lost their influence. In the olden days, it is the kings and chiefs that ensured that the society functioned well. But now that is not the case, and now you have and now you have leaders elected democratically, but I think we should infuse traditional systems with modern systems of governance. So that's it from Daily Mail. Zambia, then another top headline, U.S. courts Zimbabwe for critical mineral supply. That is U.S. courts Zimbabwe for critical mineral supply. So basically, this is another time U.S. is looking for minerals to power its semiconductor industry. Of course, China controls the semiconductor market by leaps and bounds, and so the U.S. is looking for rare earth metals to supply its own industries. The US does not have semiconductor industries, and of course, that is why President Trump is instituting slapping countries such as China with a lot of tariffs. And of course, I think that's something that we really need to think through. And I think that is something that Africans should be able to add value to their own minerals. Why do we export our raw materials instead of adding value? Let's convert gold and diamond to jewelry. Let's convert uh, copper to electronics. Let's convert titanium to aeroplane parts. Let's convert coltan to mobile phone and computers. Let's convert uranium to nuclear power. Let's convert cotton to designer clothes. That's how we will be able to. Otherwise, think about it. Cotton that's exported from Uganda to Italy creates 13 times more jobs in Italy than in Uganda. So you can imagine we need to value add. So then that's it. Then I will move over to another headline. I will move over to another headline. To another headline, Tanzania's vice president speaks of prayers to keep intruders out of state house. So that's about prayers and the role of religion in Africa. So do you think religion is a force for good in Africa? Do you think religion is a force for good in Africa? That is something that I think we need to think through. But I think as China has 2 million engineers, Africa has 2 million pastors. So basically, as China uses the latest science techniques, as China uses the latest science techniques, as China uses precision data science to solve its toughest challenges, but in Africa, we play our problems away. Think about it when 1,000 people apply for a job and there are 10 slots. No matter how much they pray, 90 people will miss that job. But then that's God gave us brains, so why don't we use these brains to be able to solve our toughest challenges? That's something. I'm not saying we should be a godless society, but for God's sake, we were given brains by the Almighty God. So why don't we use it to be able to solve our toughest challenges. So that's something that we really need to think through. Then we'll move over to another headline that is Maggie Online. From Maggie Online, the myth of diamond dependence. So, of course, as minerals are discovered in Africa, other sectors of the economy are dying down. Look at Nigeria. The discovery of oil meant that other sectors such as agriculture died down. So basically, that's something that I think has made has made other sectors of the economy. We need to look at Dubai. They saw that oil was going to run out by 2030. So what did they do? They diversified the economy so that then you could have they diversified the economy so that then you could have oil, so that then you could have Dubai becoming a center of global commerce and tourism. And truly, and when you are going to Dubai, people assume you're going to do a lot of shopping, so you can't see very much how that then translates to improve the economic fortunes for Dubai. So I think Diamond in is the economic mainstay of Botswana, but that needs to change. It needs to diversify other sectors of the economy so that then the economy is able to look at the United States. It does not have one engine of growth. You have Silicon Valley, you have Wall Street, you have Hollywood, all these sectors contributing to the growth. You have manufacturing in Detroit. You have all these different sectors of the economy in America contributing towards the growth of those places. Then another top headline. I will look at another headline from Punch Nigeria. Tinubu wife for historic UK visit. So basically, this is about the visit of the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu visiting the UK. So why do our leaders love to travel outside? That's the question we need to ask. Why do our leaders always want to travel outside? Why can't they stay in their countries and help bring about change in their countries? That's something that I think we need to think through. And I think if our leaders stay in Africa, then they will be able to bring development to our people. That's the way we could bring development to our people. So basically, I think that needs to change. That is the way we can bring change about a change in Africa if we stay. I applaud the departed president of Tanzania, John Pombe Magufuli. He traveled out of Tanzania only 5 times, and on both of those times, he traveled in Africa. So basically, we need to stay. Our leaders need to stay within Africa. Then another top headline: Dangote Cement vows to make Africa self-sufficient. So this is about the richest man in Africa, the richest black man, Aliko Dangote, saying he will make Africa self-sufficient. So this is a story of pioneering entrepreneurship. So I think entrepreneurs are the ones who will solve Africa's toughest challenges. I don't have a lot of hope in our politicians, and I think it is our entrepreneurs that will basically, I think it is our entrepreneurs that will make change in Africa, and I think they solve our toughest challenges, and that's the way they will be able to bring about change. Aliko Dangote built a $20 billion refinery that was not built by the government of Nigeria. It was built by a private citizen, that is Aliko Dangote. So you can imagine the richest black man really severing his capital towards investment in Africa. Let's give the fact that Africa has so many problems that creates a lot of opportunities for self growth in Africa. So that's it from the Guardian in Nigeria. Then I will move over to another headline from I will move over to another headline, that is Uganda to grow at 8%. Uganda's economic growth to grow at 8%. So that means then that Uganda is able to leverage on. That means that Uganda is able to leverage on its economic growth. So maybe some kind of stability means that Uganda is growing by leaps and bounds. So 8%, and maybe that's a thumbs up to Yoweri Museveni. So maybe we need dictators after all. Maybe we need benevolent dictators who can then ensure that benevolent dictators can ensure that we develop this. Benevolent dictators can ensure that we get our development priorities right. So that's it from that is grow by, and Africa really needs to grow year on year, double digits year on year for at least 30 years for it to eliminate poverty completely. Think about China, it has grown double digit 10% year on year since the 1980s up to 2020 when it moved to single digits. That has meant that China has been able to lift 500 million people out of poverty during this time. So you can imagine that thing, and I think Africa, I think that can happen also in Africa. So let us also move over to another headline. Uh, Let's move over to another headline. That is when a parliament election presidential polls have been gazetted in Uganda. So that's about presidential polls. Of course, the opposition figure Bobby Wine said he will not go to court because he does not trust the courts. The courts basically the courts will basically the courts are going to basically give victory to Yoweri Museveni. So basically, are our elections free and fair? Maybe that's the question we need to ask. Are our elections free and fair? Maybe that's the question that we truly must be asking. So that's it from the daily. That's it from the Daily Monitor. Uganda. Then another top headline, the peril that faces Tanzanians returning from diaspora first. So of course, our diaspora are the ones who sustain economies. In Kenya, I think they pour in about $6 billion to the Kenyan economy every year. So our diaspora are truly our greatest asset. So basically, they have seen how developed systems work. They have been to that are able to economies that are more complex than ours, and so they contribute majorly to African countries. But I think a Kenyan professor says our diaspora contribute 40 times more to the economy of. He says Africans in America contribute to 40 times more to the growth of to the economy of America than they do to their home country in terms of remittances. So we need to also, as we are exporting these planes, we need to ensure that we create the right climate for them to stay, so that then we can make use of these planes. Think about maybe economies that are powered by diaspora. Eventually, they returned home. Think about Japan. Their best brains went to universities in America, such as Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, Stanford, but they returned home and applied those skills. Look at the Chinese. They go and study abroad, but they do return home and basically help build their countries. That's what needs to change. And I think this country just a minute. So I think these countries can teach us a lesson. China and Japan, when their brains go abroad, they go and learn about the latest manufacturing and the latest means of production, and then they come back with capital, and then they are able to think about China. The answer to YouTube is TikTok. Think about the answer to Google is Baidu.com. The answer to X and Facebook is Weibo. So you can see how Chinese parents go ahead and go study abroad and come back home. Maybe that's different from the Indians who go to study abroad and then stay in the UK or in America and Africans for that matter. So that's it from the Citizen Tanzania. Then another top headline. This is from this is from Iran Online. From Iran Online, this is about Somalia recognition of Somaliland by Israel. Somaliland is a breakaway region. So basically, it is a breakaway region, and I just think that this breakaway region is basically the Somaliland is a breakaway region, and I think it can. That just shows you ever since the overthrow of Siad Barre in 1991, Somalia has never known peace, and so that calls for. And I think some libertarians are really calling for a lawless Somalia as a case study. They say that libertarians don't believe in any government at all. They believe everything can be private, even the army and the police can be private. So basically, they say Somalia, without a central government, with all this anarchy, has the lowest data cost in Africa and the seventh lowest data cost in the world, all because 11 telecom operators are competing. Or 11 telecom operators are competing for a share. 11 telecom operators are competing to offer a value to shareholders. So that's it. Then another top headline is Somaliland's recognition gambit ignores Somali constitutional reality. So that is about Somaliland, a fairly successful, stable region, but whose passport is not recognized internationally. Then finally, for today, I will move over to another headline. At this standard, Ethiopia accuses Eritrea of ethnic territorial incursion, backing armed groups demands troop withdrawal. So that is it about the top headlines of today, where I have looked at the top headlines from Africa, where we basically do what we do is we analyze uh, top headlines from Africa and then give our 2 cents worth of opinion. So bye for now till the next time. Bye for now.